Now, you're very welcome back. So, an issue that we have discussed at length with our next guest, and we will continue to discuss at length with our next guest every time it arises. Any of us who watched the Man City Real Madrid games were once again bowled over by the quality of Vinicius Jr. And we were also, I suspect, last night dismayed to see the scenes at the Mestalla. He is once again the target of the most pernicious, vicious racism. This was in a match against Valencia. He was also sent off in the game for violent conduct in the dying minutes of the game. Valencia won 1-0 for what it's worth, which isn't much. And the context here, of course, I mean, these are just the headline moments. There are, I suspect, a litany of incidents we don't know anything about. But for instance, if you just take what a 22-year-old here is being asked to suffer and be on the receiving end over the last 7-8 months. September just gone. Atletico fans sang racist songs towards him in particular. It's towards him. It's very much directed towards him outside their own stadium before Real Madrid played there in September 2022. That same month, you'll remember, we spoke to Graham, pundits in Spain criticising his goal celebration, the temerity to dance and all the abuse that went with it. December of 22 appeared to be subject to racist abuse when he walked past fans at Valladolid when he was substituted. January of this year, an effigy was hung from a bridge near the club's training ground. This was before a game against Atletico. February of this year, Mallorca fans filmed racially abusing him during a game against Real Madrid. And in March just gone, La Liga talked about the intolerable racist behaviour once again observed against Vinicius, this time in a game against Barcelona. And it was subsequently reported to the Barcelona Court of Instruction. Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, evening.
Joseph, evening.
The context is disgusting. We're here again. This was a bumper, no pun intended with your Twitter handle. This was a bumper weekend of Irish sport. We had Katie Taylor fighting. We had a European Cup final involving Leinster. We had a gazillion GAA matches. The Premier League obviously dominates the television landscape. I suspect a lot of people listening are maybe only hearing about this for the first time. So could you describe what happened last night? And I think in particular the upset on Vinicius's face, because that was the image I think most of us will take.
So for Emery, who then was suffering the La Rochelle comeback, or watching the context, not context for the racism, but the context for the cauldron of the game is that Valencia hate Real Madrid, absolutely hate them. Valencia are scrapping for their lives. They set out to play an aggressive, pressing game. They play very impressively, indeed. They scored, and Real Madrid were pummeling them. Mamardashvili, Valencia's Georgian goalkeeper, was playing absolutely brilliantly. There's a bizarre moment when a Valencia ball boy throws the ball on the pitch in the penalty area. Vinicius is breaking into the penalty area. He's about to be either tackled cleanly, which I doubt, or a penalty is about to be given away, or he's about to get past his man within the penalty area, cutting in at high speed from Madrid's left. And one of the central defenders for Valencia, seeing the spare ball, which is sitting in the penalty area, the officials hadn't spotted it, kicks it so accurately. If he kicked it accurately, Valencia wouldn't be in danger of relegation. Kicks it so accurately that the ball that Vinicius is dribbling in at high speed, at full tilt, disappears from underneath him. Both balls go out of play. The danger is averted. VAR gets involved. And the Turkish central defender is subsequently booked for what looks like a deliberately ungentlemanly conduct. And it's at this point that three quarters of the way through the game, Vinicius is being abused. He'd been racially abused on arrival at the stadium, where hundreds of people, I couldn't see any women involved, so let me say, take a risk, say hundreds of men are shouting about being the monkey at full pitch, surrounded by cops who do nothing. He has to walk into his place of work that day with that echoing clearly throughout the game, because there are now not only social media videos, but the two central Spanish broadcasters one for domestic audience, one for international audience, have individual mics around the ground, and they pick up individual comments. The level of directed abuse at him, and I'm saying abuse now deliberately because there are many white men in this industry in Spain now who are saying, we support him, this is wrong, but it's also the case that the level of insults that are permitted now, that are fashionable now, to us are intolerable. I don't think they're doing so in tone-deaf way, saying we're all the same and we're affected by a kind of version of racism for us. There is a feeling that the football community in Spain, particularly in the top league, is right up to its chin. And for whatever reason, I hear white men in managerial or playing positions around La Liga coming out to support people of colour who are abused. For whatever reason, they join the chorus of anger. I'll be welcoming them in. So then what happens is Vinicius specifically identifies the person who's been making monkey noises and his arms under his arms tucked under his armpits like a monkey. He's specific, and there's a furore where Gaia, captain of Valencia, goes and tries to pull him away from doing that. Now, Gaia subsequently speaks out against racism. Gaia is subsequently sympathetic to what the plight of Vinicius at that stadium, but he does an act which seems to say, stop doing that. Over in the touchline, while Vinicius is literally on the edge of the grass, not the pitch, but the grass where it connects with the stand behind the goal, pointing at the guy and looking around for security people or police to say, this is the guy who's racially abusing me. Justin Kluivert, who has a very good game and is a young man of colour himself, is over at the fourth official, gesturing to the fourth official that Vinicius should be booked. This is the point at which Vinicius twice goes over to Ancelotti. Ancelotti says to him, I don't want to take you off because you're not to blame, you're the victim. What do you want to do? Vinicius said, well, I do want to come off, but I do want the game to be stopped. And Ancelotti is saying, I don't want that responsibility to be on your shoulders. The match delegate for Real Madrid and Ancelotti go to the referee, and the referee says, there's a protocol. It's a 3-strike and out. We can't abandon the pitch just yet. We have to warn them and then warn them the second time, and then the third time we can take the players off the pitch. At that point, you watch Ancelotti talking to Vinicius. You can see the anger amongst Vinicius' colleagues. And then what happens, I find almost equally pernicious, because I have no proof, Joe, and the burden of proof is on us. So I can't say that the two Valencia players I'm about to act and the refereeing staff on the pitch and in the bar room, I cannot say they're racist. But I argue in the ESPN column I've written, and I'm sticking to that point with you, that if you are Vinicius, or if you are those people who work with him or love him, and you see how he's treated compared to how Mamardashvili, the Georgian national goalkeeper for Valencia, and Hugo Duro are treated, you'll be left going, well, I wonder why that is. My reason for explaining that, and I'll close so you can come back in, Joe, but you asked me to describe the picture. Yeah. What happens is that Mamardashvili, this gigantic, exceptionally talented Georgian goalkeeper, has made two very, very, very not good, world-class saves in short supply, in short instance, and Kroos's free kick is the last one. He's touched it over. It's very late in the match. Valencia are leading 1-0. We're getting close to the end of added time. Valencia want to waste time. Yunus Musa takes the ball behind the goal line and tries to waste time. Tony Rudiger runs over, quite rightly, wrestles the ball from him, pushes him. I don't know if he pushed him enough to send him down, but necessarily down goes Yunus Musa. Vinicius has been going over to Rudiger and Musa to try and help get the ball back, to take the corner, to try and equalise. And all he's done is he's standing over Yunus Musa, who Rudiger has pushed down. Mamardashvili sprints off out of his goal like a lunatic, and I'm going to say attacks Vinicius. There's a massive, massive row. 85-90% of the players on the pitch become involved, and Mamardashvili is right in Vinicius' face, screaming at him with 2 or 3 people holding him back. And Hugo Duro, the Valencia forward, has his arm crooked around Vinicius' neck in what is a chokehold. Hugo Duro, then as things are separated up by people pulling everybody apart, as will happen, is struck by Vinicius' forearm. And at that point, having been sinned against all night, not sinned, not the sinner, Vinicius commits a red card offence and he's sent off in total isolation for what he did there. That's right, it's a red card. Mamardashvili is part of the VAR review because there's a VAR review over this whole incident. He the worst he gets is a booking. That's wrong. That's outright wrong. I can't state specifically why that different criterion is applied to him, but I have my suspicions. The VAR team don't even recommend that Hugo Duro, who was not involved in the original incident, has Vinicius by a chokehold. No sanction recommended from the VAR team or on the on-pitch refereeing team. That's wrong. In the context of what was happening that night, in the context of what was done to Vinicius, in the context of this national outcry, finally, about the lack of action over racial abuse to anybody basically who's not white in Spanish football. I cannot explain in any way that's satisfactory how the all-white refereeing officiating team judged these two white men differently in their actions from Vinicius because of the rule, but because of what football laws states. He gets sent off, and I'll tail off by saying Thibaut Courtois said the culture of insulting. I watch what Vinny goes through every week. If the protocol doesn't immediately recommend that we should walk off, the protocol needs to change. Ancelotti on live television says, I don't want to talk about the match. I want to talk about something far more important. Ancelotti specifies that he thinks there's a grave problem across the country, epitomised by the way in which Vinicius is consistently racially abused. This in previous months, Joe, when we've talked about this, I have said that the two things that need to happen on the punishment scale need to be closure of certain stands, closure of certain stadiums in the right context of following racist actions. And the other is that white colleagues of these non-white footballers across all teams who are abused must stand with them and speak out. That happens. Ceballos speaks out. Courtois speaks out. Carlo Ancelotti speaks out. And that, for my taste, is the way to begin. Xavi today has spoken out and said, previously I've thought about, taking a team off a pitch. I haven't been the manager until these last 2 seasons here. In that context, I will take a team off a pitch. And somebody chirped up Xavi Hernandez, the Barcelona manager, in the press conference, well, this is Real Madrid. And he's like, club colours, club crests don't come into this. This is a human issue. We stand together. He said, why should... He said, also, this is what I meant about... Courtois talked about being personally insulted. Xavi talked about being personally insulted. And it's a different, but nonetheless related issue about the cavalier way many people who go to games in Spain feel that they can act. I think it's echoed across some stadiums in Britain too. But the point is, Xavi said, this is my workplace. I'm not willing to accept it. Try to go into a bakery or a newspaper office. He said, well, maybe in a newspaper office. He said, try and go on a building site and abuse a worker. You've got a brick in the head. Now, unlike me, I'm sure Xavi doesn't feel that the occasional resorting to violence is the right thing, and I'm trying to control the fury, that impotent fury that I feel right now. It's leaving me shaking with just fury, because it's time for cold and clear-cut analysis, forensic language, rather than promises of violence and fury. But Joe, it was disgusting what happened last night, and the paper trail to lead up to it has been, in terms of Spanish football, years and years and years. In terms of Vinicius, months and months and months.
Yeah. And it struck me, I mentioned at the outset, that he was in tears on the pitch. And I saw Rio Ferdinand, for instance, he tweeted, how many times do we need to see this young man, and he is just 22 years of age, subjected to this shit? I see pain, I see disgust, I see him needing help, and the authorities are not doing shit to help him. I saw Gianni Infantino then with the usual stuff. Thankfully, he didn't claim he was black. So he gave full solidarity to Vinicius, and then he said that there's no place for racism in football, and FIFA stands by players, which was just the usual impotent language. And more worryingly, I saw, and this is to let the listeners know, not you, I know you're aware of all this, but the La Liga president, for instance, Javier Tebas, I mean, he responded to Vinicius's Instagram post, which I'll come to in a moment, and he said before criticising, this is the La Liga president lecturing Vinicius, this is where we are, before criticising and insulting La Liga, it's necessary that you inform yourself properly, Vinicius Jr. So, I mean, sit with that a moment. And as for Vinicius himself, he talked about how La Liga belongs to racists, and he said, sorry for the Spaniards who don't agree, but today in Brazil, Spain is known as a country of racists, and with everything that happens on a weekly basis, I have no way to defend Spain. I agree. You said something interesting there, Graham, as you sketched out the details. You said there's been a national outcry. Finally, this has been a different reaction? Yeah,
I have no wish to sound naive. I try my hardest not to be stupid. But I sense the tiniest changing of direction, changing of the tide. One of the central problems is that Spain's society has gone through nowhere near the societal and immigration adjustments and trauma in some instances that Ireland and UK, for example, or France have. And for that reason, they're, in my opinion, in social terms, miles behind. But, for example, Marca today has one editorial from a man called Carlos Carpio, who's just about second in charge, where he's coruscating against racism. Doesn't say it's partially excused by Vinicius' misbehaviour. He does say, right down the bottom of the column, that Vinicius has to change and that Vinicius is beyond mischievous. And it's a fact, if you and I, and your listenership is intelligent, if you and I can step out of this conversation and focus only on Vinicius as a 22-year-old, because of the ritualistically barbaric way he's treated, there is no question that his actions have become more pungent. That's a fact, and were I him, but if it were me in that, he makes me look like Mother Teresa in terms of his restraint.
What kind of things, just on that one, because I did see a Spanish TV commentator heavily criticised for, after the red card, giving it the old, well, he doesn't help himself. And I think, as you said, in the context of racist abuse, that's irrelevant. But away from the racist abuse he's receiving, what kind of things does he do?
Joe, wait, it's really important before I answer that it was a Spanish journalist on co-commentary in English.
Well, do you know what? I have the clip, so rather than us talk about it, because it might be just of interest and of note here. So La Liga TV, and you'll hear Tony Padilla. He's the co-commentator, rather than me paraphrase him. Have a listen.
This really is a huge call, and it diffuses everything with a yellow card. And the second yellow means Vinicius is sent off. And this goes up a level, and this is something that will just run and run and run, Tony.
So it's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
Because the player that is out, and obviously that's a red card always, it's also the player that suffers from verbal abuse. So we should stand with Vini Jr. if he suffers verbal abuse, racial abuse. But that it's never justifies that he hits Duro. It's Vini's mistake. It's not a question of who's the bad one, and look at Vini Jr. You are going to second division. So we should stand against racism always, but also we should say that Vini Jr. is not an angel, he's not perfect. Sometimes he provokes the other teams. So every time he's suffering verbal abuse, we should stand against racism. We should stand with Vini Jr. But also we cannot say that he's a saint. It's always committing a lot of mistakes, and we saw it in 5 minutes. Really complicated moment, and well, it's been going on during all the season, situations like this one, and it explodes today here in Mestalla.
So,
Joe,
Joe, go on.
Wait, because I didn't know that clip was coming. One, I want to say that when Vinicius goes behind the goal, but 15 minutes, 20 minutes prior to that, Tony is the co-commentator, and Tony is unequivocal. Tony says, and I have audio tape of it, where he says, never, ever, and those are his words, under any circumstances is racial abuse of a player justified. Ever. He, at that stage, he doesn't mention behaviour. And in the clip you've played, if anybody wants to listen to it, slowly and clearly, they may dislike mentioning the two strands, the racist abuse and Vinicius' behaviour, within the same paragraph.
Yeah.
But in no moment there does Tony say that one has caused the other. He does not say that. And previously in the match, Tony is unequivocal about there is no excuse, there can be no place for racist abuse. So, social media being what it is, people didn't pay attention to or might not have been watching because of GAA and KTN and La Rochelle, Lindsay, whatever. But people have not picked up on what he said at that stage, which was unequivocal. He's a Republican, sort of left-wing, social values kind of man. And my only point about this, Joe, is if he is held out to be part of the problem, during what I think is a very complicated moment, speaking in a foreign language, then I think people are missing the point. Now, what I began to say before you introduced the concept of that commentary is that in Marca, that senior journalist Carlos Carpio's column, at least 80% of it is about purging the unacceptable racism. When I moved to this country, that wouldn't have been written. Marca also carry, listen, I'm genuinely sorry if I get the number wrong, but something like a 40 bullet point educational piece for readers about what racism is, why it's unacceptable, what type of subconscious racism the reader might be guilty of. It sounds maybe infantile to a society like yours, but it is a part of the re-education of the Spanish public, which wasn't taking place 21 years ago when I moved here, has moved, I'm sad to say, at a snail's pace, but Ancelotti speaking up, Courtois speaking out, Gaia saying, I don't like Vinicius' behaviour, but there is no, Gaia, the Valencia captain, there is no excuse for racial abuse. I want to believe that this incident, culminating months of debate, has been so disgusting, so degrading, that it can spark a different kind of debate. And equally, like I said, I don't care why white professionals come on board, whether it's out of selfishness, as long as it re-educates the thugs, the bullies, the idiots, the sheep who are like, this is a good way to put off a rival. And I'm not, a professor of philosophy. Is a person who uses racist words to put up a rival and are an outright racist in their daily life? Well, if you use racist words and expressions, you're a racist. Does that mean that you are, irredeemably lost forever? Are you an outright racist to the core? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I do believe that there are many, many hundreds of people around the stadiums in Spain who are like, Vinicius can be got to, so we will try to get to him. And those people can be made to feel it's unacceptable, by their part of the stadium being closed, by their stadium being closed. Where I think the La Liga stand for the old definition of what is effective, and there's efficacy and Charles, I'm so angry. The words of you can be efficient and effective. There's an efficiency about La Liga reporting to the government body the instance of racist abuse, but it's not effective. There isn't efficacy.
Right.
And that's another giant step to be taken. Not like, yeah, we've ticked the box, it's been reported to the limit of our powers. Efficacy needs to be... excuse, I made a fool of myself by struggling to find my word. Efficacy needs to be the new F word in this.
We're out of time, but that was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.